Hi, I've been saying I've been going to do this again for quite some time, and I'm just now getting around to it. It is a little bit breezy out, so I hope you can hear this okay. This is a Tailwind that first flew in 2002, and I had it brought up from Alabama in August of 2018, and I have just over 100 hours in the cockpit now, and that includes a stint of about 6 months the first winter I didn't fly it. So I'm going to do a brief walk around and give a brief discussion about the airplane. The first walk around I did had the 3-bladed ground adjustable warp drive propeller, and I have since switched out to a 2-blade Prince P-tip that is a 68 diameter 49 pitch, and I was a little concerned because it seemed to be over revving, and then I did a tachometer check, and it turns out my tachometer is reading about 500 RPM high, so really the RPMs are right where they're supposed to be. And after discovering that, the cruise speeds are right back to where they should be, and the climb is actually considerably better, so I'm real happy with this propeller. My cruise speed at 130 is right at maximum RPM, about 2,800. If I throttle it back to 25, my cruise speed settles down to somewhere between 120 and 125. Again, these are miles per hour, not knots. The 100 horsepower is nowhere near as fast as some of the bigger engine ones, but I am real satisfied with the performance right now. And also the 4 gallons per hour that it produces. Most of my flights are under 200 miles, and even the ones that I plan to do that'll stretch into the 1,000-mile range, I'm not going to be too concerned about the cruise speed right now. I'm going to do a quick walk around and then go inside the cockpit and show you a little bit about what is in there. Nothing fancy, just old steam gauges, and hopefully this won't jump around a whole lot. This one does have what I guess some people would call the new wing on it. That new wing design is actually years old now, and they're more common, I think, than the original wings. Although, not speaking from experience, I believe the original wing, just by virtue of its plan form, was a little bit faster. The stalls were also considerably more abrupt with the original wing, or so I'm told. We're just going to do a quick walk around to give a 360 view of this airplane. I'm going to stop here because it may be jumping around a little bit. I absolutely, thoroughly enjoy the look of this airplane. The builder, James Shiver, was a second build of a Tailwind, and he was a AMP. I don't know if he was an AI or not, but he did a superb job, and I'm grateful to him for trusting me with the purchase of his airplane. I did have it flown up by a friend of mine that had some experience in the Tailwind, and was checked out by the same friend. He flies a Pilatus PC-24 jet for a living, and again had some time in a Tailwind. He's also a CF II, so you know, everything worked out good that way. It took me about 3 hours to realize I probably wasn't going to crash it, and about another 20 after that to start to become friends with it. Now that I've got 100 hours in it, I am completely happy with this airplane. I've had other nice airplanes. This one ranks at the top. They're all different, so it's hard to say one is better than the other, but this by no means is second to any airplane that I've owned. And those of you that know me know I had a Tri-Pacer that I had some seller's remorse, but this has satisfied that desire, I guess, for a little more performance airplane. It does trim hands out, hands off rather, And a little bit of right rudder is used. It does want to yaw a little bit. It's not worth tweaking the rudder trim to eliminate that, because any given circumstance, and it could go the other direction. So here I'm going to walk in to the co-pilot side. My wife's name is on the door, Rose. She's been very supportive in this. She is a new to aviation individual. We've only been married about 7 years, and we're both in our 50s. But she's been really supportive of it. This is as good as I can get it. The cockpit. Nothing fancy here, just good old-fashioned steam gauges. I do use a GPS in my phone that I rely too much on, frankly. It does have a transponder, which I don't use right now. I am going to be going to the ADS-B out in the tail eventually. Now the control here is a reverse T. It came with a center stick, but I had to do some aerobics, I guess you could say, to use the throttle and the center stick and drop the flaps and the trim. So I did a reverse T. It's a little bit harder to get in and out of, but if you got any kind of flexibility, that's really not a problem. It does have round windows in it instead of the conventional triangles. I'm not sure what that was for. He sounds to me, or looked to me, like he had maybe some boat captaining experience, or just like the Marine look, so he put those in there instead. I've had a few comments on them, all positive. Pretty straightforward baggage compartment, sling baggage compartment. This does have a roll trim on it, and that is what you're looking at with the two wheels connecting the flap mechanism. It does lock. I can adjust it in flight, but I'm reluctant to. I just don't want that coming disconnected and having one flap, you know, flapping around, pun intended, while the other one is stuck. So if you've ever experienced a linkage failure like that, you'll know what I'm talking about. It can get pretty uncomfortable real fast. As far as the tail wheel assembly, this is also a deviation from the plans. It's a fiberglass tail wheel spring, and connected with springs via linkage, which you can see in the photo. And I like it. I like it a lot. It's stiff, but it handles really well. This airplane is very docile. In the stall characteristics, it stalls clean at 60 miles an hour. You hear the vibration, if you want to call it that, in the tail first, and then you feel it in the stick, and it just very gently pitches forward. There is no wing drop and no sudden falling out of the sky, which really, when I first started flying it, surprised me. Full flaps, stalls at 50. Second notch of flaps is not worth mentioning, but it's between 50 and 60 miles an hour, just like you would expect. The spinner I've got with a propeller, had to cut and trim it. That was an experience all in itself. Seems like the simpler jobs would take the least amount of time, but trying to get that so it sits on there the way it's supposed to and doesn't cut into the propeller just took me a little longer than I thought it would, but I'm very happy with the result. The airplane engine is a Continental 0200. I believe I mentioned that. The data plate says manufactured in 1946. This has been remanufactured once. The engine and airframe both have just over 500 hours on them now. And again, I'm very happy with it. There are some things that need to be done because the airplane is almost 20 years old. I am going to be replacing the windscreen, possibly the side panel windows and the door as well. I am going to add the landing light back into it, but it was mounted in front of the air intake, which is what that little hole is above the air intake there, and I didn't really like it. I thought maybe it was messing with the airflow going into the carburetor, and it just looked like an extra appendage hanging down. So I'm probably going to box in a place on the wing, on one of the outboard wings, probably the pilot side, and then use that as a landing light. It does have wingtip lights, but I'm going to replace those with low voltage, low amp lights. I'm sorry, low amp lights, not low voltage lights, and get a little brighter system. It does have a strobe in the tail. I do not fly this at night right now. I'm not sure how much nighttime flying I will do with it in the future. I enjoy flying at night, but for the most part, the lights are just for sunset and also in high activity airports such as dome patrols and fly-ins. The radios, pretty standard. Older, as you saw, but they function well. I'm not one to spend a lot of money on headsets either. You know, flight comms do me just fine. That is about it. Total investment in this airplane is right around $20,000. The brakes seem to be holding up well. They are toe brakes, and they will turn this airplane much too quickly if you're not careful. They do not hold the airplane back at full throttle. You have to do a running or a high-speed taxi when you're checking the magnetos out. I have had to get a new mag on the right side installed, and while we were doing that, we also rebuilt the left mag. Other than that, it's been pretty trouble-free. I've had no issues with it at all. This airplane, for any of you that are interested in the Tailwind, there's a lot of history behind it. They were designed back in the mid-50s, and they were the first airplane that was okayed to be built as an experimental aircraft. And so, you know, there's a lot of history behind them. There's been some advances made in airplanes since then, so I'm not going to say that this is the end-all of aircraft. But if you want to build a piece of history or just buy a piece of history that performs way ahead of its time, and it still does keep up with some of the best of them, especially when you start adding the bigger engines, the 125 and 150 horsepower motors in them, they really become rocket ships. No aerobatics, for those of you that are wondering. They are stressed quite well, but I'm 59 years old at the time of this recording, and I kind of enjoy boring. That is it. If anybody has any questions, feel free to respond here, and I'll do my best to answer them. With the new propeller, climb rate, fully loaded on an 80-degree day at 820 feet field elevation, is 1,100 feet a minute. I'm sorry, that's with me in full fuel, and I'm 180 pounds. With a passenger that grosses it out, and gross weight is 1,250. The airplane weighs 760 empty. Those are pounds. It will still climb out at 900 feet per minute. So again, with the cruise speeds and the climb rate with the 0200 and this particular propeller, I am very happy with it. I'm going to shut this down so you don't get too bored, but feel free to contact me here. And if you'd like me to contact you on a more personal or private note, just leave some way for me to get a hold of you, and I'll do that as well. Good luck with whatever you choose to own, buy, or build. And just remember that any airplane you get, whether it's a Tailwind or something else, if you're not familiar with it, don't just expect to be able to get into it and fly it. Either get some time in something with similar performance, or ideally find an instructor that has time in one of these airplanes, whatever you choose, and get some dual, even if you consider yourself an experienced pilot. I have owned several home builds, including a Sonnery 2, and was still grateful to have an experienced pilot check me out in this. I have just under 900 hours in the air, and I can't stress enough. You're better to be safe than to wish you had been. Safe flying, everybody, and hopefully we'll meet up at another airport somewhere.